need to focus on human capital.
All right, so we just had a little talk during the break. We're going to have more talk with our special guest today. But of course, only in the past several years have been a boom period for artificial intelligence or AI development. Now, long thought to be a technology only seemingly possible in the realm of science fiction. Today, in the present day, AI has become increasingly integrated into daily lives, and its development is progressing at a rapid pace.
Yes, Caroline. So to talk more about AI and how can this technology help predict the future, joining us today, ID Food Business Development and Portfolio Management Director / 100 ide untuk Presiden dan DPR baru book author Dirgayuza Setiawan, or widely known as Yuza, right?
Yeah.
A recent report from a major news outlet suggests a lack of innovative ideas among candidates running in the 2024 elections. Could you elaborate more on this?
And by the way, good morning, Yuza.
Yeah,
Thank you
good
so
morning.
much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I read this report on Compass, right, in June, that there's not a lot of ideas being discussed ahead of the 2024 election, which is now only 90 days away.
That's right.
So I asked my two friends, the all-knowing AI from Google and from OpenAI,
Okay.
what would you do if you became a legislator in Indonesia or you became a president in Indonesia?
Okay.
Right? What are some of the most important ideas or important policies would you introduce to Indonesia that we don't have implemented yet in the country, but you can prove that other countries have implemented and has been successful at implementing those ideas? So they came up with a list of ideas, and it's really great to be talking with them because they know everything, right? They look at all of our social economic data. They compare us with other countries in the region and also in the world. And they also know every single piece of legislation that made a difference in every other country, right? So you don't have to go on a junket and travel the world and see what other people are doing. You just need to talk and spend the time and use the right prompts to get all the data you need from this Google and OpenAI.
Right. So, Yuza, I also want to ask before we go to our further questions. 100 ide untuk Presiden dan DPR baru. When did you start writing this book and talking with two of your friends?
Yeah, so I started in July and finished in August.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's very fast.
Yeah,
Yes, like
3
1
weeks.
month. 3 weeks, 1 month period, and it's done. So what do you see right now in the landscape before you wrote this book and before you have this integration with AI? You see there's a lot of lack of ideas, or the ideas that is now being kind of one of the agendas by the president and also vice president candidates are still very. We've already heard it before. We need something. We need and we need more fresh ideas. Was that on top of your mind when you?
Yeah, that's exactly on top of my mind, right? And the good thing is now we can see the three candidates running for office. They have released their platform, and I'm very glad that all three of them have taken up some ideas from this book.
Okay, well, that's great.
Okay, which ones? Can you point it out?
Yeah, so one of the most important thing that the next president needs to focus on is nutrition, right?
Yes.
And then after that is the quality of education, right? You cannot have a good child growth if there's no one taking care of the child, right?
That's right.
So one of the idea that got picked up by Pak Ganjar, for example, is paternity leave. Indonesia does not have paternity leave, right? Whereas in many other countries, it's proven that when you give enough leave for both parents, the mother and the father, you get better care for the children. Yeah, so that's one of the idea by Pak Ganjar, for example. And then Pak Prabowo picked up the idea of a free school meals, right? It turns out that so many of our children go to school hungry, and they don't have enough money to buy high quality nutritious meal. And if you look at Indonesia today, actually not many schools in Indonesia have proper canteens, right? If you go out of the schools, you see all the street vendors, they don't really care about the nutritional value that they provide to our children, right? But it's very crucial. If we don't address this issue, then the gap between the haves and the don'ts become larger, right? The haves, they send the school to school, the schools with proper canteen, and the don'ts, they don't have proper nutrition. Jadi Pak Prabowo picked up the idea of free school meals, right? It has been done in the past in some of our regions. For example, Jakarta had a free school meal program before during Pak Anies' time in 2019 before the pandemic hits. But in many other countries, it's actually an obligation for the country to provide. For example, in India, in 2005, the constitutional court there ruled whoever become the prime minister, the government have to provide free school meal to every children in schools every day, right? So that got picked up. And another idea is the Internal Revenue Service, like IRS in the US, right? So in order to pay for all this infrastructure, for having good children and education, we need to have the funds to pay for it, right? And Indonesia right now don't have good tax ratio. Our tax ratio is one of the lowest in the world. And among the G20, our revenue is the lowest in the world. Actually, if you look at the government spending to GDP, in the G20, we are actually the lowest, right? Our government spending to GDP is only 15%, whereas other countries go up to 40%, 30%, 20%, meaning that there's a lot of government involvement. But you need to be able to pay for it, right? So for the IRS idea, which is also in this book, it got picked up by Pak Anies and also Pak Prabowo. Both said that we need to separate the Directorate General of Tax, becoming a new ministry that focuses on revenue collection, and it has to be, filled with not bureaucrats, but tax collection professionals, right? So these are people who get paid very well, and they get educated very well in order to use the latest technologies to collect the taxes we actually need to collect.
And you were speaking about nutrition. We know that also the government has been, especially in this past period or 2 periods of under the ruling of President Joko Widodo, of stunting. And you were talking about nutrition. That is exactly correct. How we can prevent stunting and decrease the growth of rate of that is because of nutrition, both from the mother and also to the children.
Correct.
We were talking about parental leave also in regards to pregnancy. Yes, we've seen a lot of countries in the world that's both not only the mother but also the father have the time off to be with the baby and also with the children.
But on that point, so out of this 100 ideas, I asked the AI, right? If I can only pick one, which one would be the most important? Actually, the AI said the most important is conditional cash transfer. BLT bersyarat, conditional cash transfer. So Indonesia actually have a cash transfer program, right? But it is not conditional. So in countries where the cash transfer is conditional, we can see not only the poverty rate going down, but also stunting rates going down significantly.
That's right.
For example, in Brazil, they have a program called Bolsa Familia, right? So all the ideas in this book, every single one have been applied in other countries, right? So there's no new idea. It's actually all implemented in other countries, and we can see the progress that it has made. So in Bolsa Familia program, implemented first time by President Lula during his first term, is conditional cash transfer. The families who get the cash can only get the cash if they can prove 3 things to the government. 1, they can prove that they bring their kid to a nutritionist every year. The nutritionists have to say that the family has been taking care of the kid, right? The second thing is they have to prove to the government that their kid attends school 80% of the time, right? 80% attendance rate. And then the third thing, because vaccine is free, they have to prove that their kid is fully vaccinated, right? That conditional cash transfer not only brought down the poverty rate in Brazil, but also brought down stunting rate significantly, and also increased attendance at schools.
And that is very stable factors too. That's right.
Yes, indeed. So I would like to discuss about the economic side. Like for so many years, I think Indonesia economic growth stay within the range of 5% except for the pandemic. People say that we need a game changer in the structure of the economy or in the industrialization. Like, what are your ideas for this that can be pursued by Indonesian government?
Yeah, that's a very good idea. So, I'm not an expert in public policy, but I do a lot of interactions with AI, right?
Yes.
So I asked exactly the same question, right? The AI told me that, Pak Yuza, if you look at the structure of Indonesian economy, 52% is household consumption, right? So we need to boost that. And how to do that? Number one, the government needs to increase spending that can help this domestic consumption. For example, the school meal program, if it's done, it can boost GDP by quite a lot, right? Because there will be new consumption, and not only that, it will be consumption from products that is made in Indonesia, and it will be done by mostly medium and small enterprises, right?
Yes.
So that is one. Secondly, of course, our buying power is currently a bit low, right? So the AI looks at, for example, the amount of bank accounts there are in Indonesia and also the amount of money in each of the bank accounts and look at the trends, right? And they showed me that, actually in the past 3 years, especially after the pandemic, the average amount of money in bank accounts of people, the average Joe in Indonesia has gone down, right? So that means there needs to be incentive for the average people so that their disposable income can go up.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
and hopefully we're going to see more great. You're reading it right now. It's just
Yeah.
fast reading right now of Mas Yuza's book.
Yeah.
In regards to this, Mas Yuza, we're on the campaign period now until
Yeah.
the 14th of February.
February, yeah.
Apologies right there during Valentine's Day. So how do you think, these ideas from your book would be adaptable and also, credible to be used during this campaign period by the candidates?
Yeah, so it's both by the candidates and also by the supporters, right?
Yes.
Because
don't forget them.
Yeah. I mean, like when I talk to a lot of the supporter groups, like the youth groups, right? Some of them, they actually don't know why they are supporting the particular candidate, except for the personalities. So they need to be able to have, what are other countries doing and what can I ask my candidate to do, right? So this book, which I give out for free, people can download the PDF on my Instagram page, right? It's basically a list, right, of things you can ask your candidate to do. For example, in the last 25 years, there's a miracle that happened next door, right, which is in Singapore. Singapore is today the country with the highest life expectancy in the world. How are they able to do that, right? Their life expectancy 30 years ago was exactly the same as Indonesia. Now, life expectancy in Singapore is 83 years, the highest in the world.
Wow.
So, some of the ways is actually exemplified also in this book, right? For example,
What are fundamentals? to that?
fundamentals is walking, for example. So Singapore government, they created infrastructure so that people can walk at least 5 to 6 kilometers a day, right? So that's 10,000 steps a day. How are they able to do that? Covered walkways. Singapore has the longest covered walkways in the world. So di Indonesia trotoar tapi ada peneduhnya.
Yeah.
Covered walkways so that people can still walk on the walkways
Very
even though it's
comfortable.
hot or
Yes,
even
rain.
though it rains.
That's right. Yes.
And the covered walkways covers all the areas between the traffic points, right? So MRT station, the bus stops, the malls, the offices, right? So they have mapped out the key walkways that needs to be covered, and then they covered everything.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
Even they have like tunnel or bridge between buildings,
Yes.
That's right.
Exactly.
Connected.
Very different with us when we're walking. Sometimes there's another vehicle that's among us. That's definitely right. And just just imagine this happened before the high-end technology and whatnot. And Singapore is already building up to that. Now, again, for your readers, have they ever asked you, Mas Yuza, how credible is these resolutions and relevance by AI?
Yeah, so if you look at the book, right, the way I structured it is what is the policy? What is the proof that the policy works in other countries? I also asked the AI, why is it relevant for Indonesia, right? So there needs to be relevant statistics on Indonesia.
Yeah.
And then lastly, all of these policies in this book has been implemented by other countries, meaning there are already legislation or presidential regulation in other countries that we can check and copy paste if we want.
Okay.
So it can be done very quickly. And you know, if you talk about credibility, all the policies already have quantitative metrics on how they are successful. Right? For example, conditional cash transfer. You can see in the last 10 years in Brazil how it changed poverty in Brazil. You can see, for example, the covered walkways, how 250 kilometers of covered walkways improve life expectancy in Singapore, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so there's basically our data that is very factual,
Yeah.
you know, happens across, you know, the
Yeah.
world and every
Yeah,
country.
and AI is very quantitative, right? They are not very good at qualitative, you know, interpretations, but quantitative-wise, it's really good.
So in the book, it is also mentioned infrastructure. You know that one of the theme being emphasized and highlighted during the current administration is infrastructures. What are the key takeaways from your research using the AI for the next or future administration of Indonesia?
Yeah, so for the next administration, it's very clear that AI, so I use two AIs, right? So I compare whether the answer matches or not. So actually the two concurs. The focus should be first on health and then secondly on education, right? Because you can build all this infrastructure, you can do all this downstreaming or hilirisasi, right? But if you don't have healthy population that has very good education, they will not be able to participate in the growth, right? For example, we look at the regional GDP growth of Indonesia in the last year. The regional GDP growth of Maluku and Papua has increased double digits, right? Increased much higher than the national GDP growth. However, the poverty rate actually goes up, right? In Maluku and Papua. Why? It's because the local talent there is not able to participate in the growth, right? The talent that is required by the downstreaming industries, they cannot get from the local population, right? So this is something that the AI picked up and identified and said, you know, Pak Yuza, if I become president, I will focus on this first, right?
Right.
Education, very important, but in order for us to have good graduates, they need to be healthy first.
Yes, so that's why I think this is very important because Indonesia is aiming for Indonesia Emas 2045, and also we will enjoy a demographic bonus, right?
Yeah.
If we cannot like optimize it by improving the quality of education and the health, yeah, it can be demography catastrophe.
Yeah, and you can ask, you know, having this two AI is like having two friends that know everything, right? And they said, you know, my user is good that Indonesia have 2045 Indonesia Emas aspiration, but remember, the key metric that is being used is GDP per capita, which means the economic activity in a country divided by the total population. That can be misleading because there can be a lot of economic activity, but not much actually is done by the Indonesians itself, right? That has to be corrected, meaning that it has to be GNI per capita, gross national income. So we look at what the Indonesians are actually doing, right? Secondly, we have to look at how the wealth is being distributed and how people participate in the economy.
And of course, I'm pretty sure that the AI knows also when it's comparing Indonesia with other countries, because you were saying that, you know, sometimes they would pick up, or AI would pick up on this is what's the policies in Brazil, or this would policy would fit it in each or in a different country, because, you know, sometimes we need to ensure that the programs and the policies that is recommended by AI align also with our demographic, you know, with our, you know, as Indonesia as the largest archipelagic country in the world and whatnot. So what's your recommendations on that though?
Yeah, so of course, there's some ideas that we can pick up. For example, there's also a miracle that happened in China recently, right? On the 100-year anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, which happened in 2012, they managed to reduce poverty rate in China to 0%. Right?
Wow.
Now, poverty in China is 0. In Indonesia, it's still 9%. Right? So this book highlights what did the Chinese do in the last 20 years in order to get it to 0%. They did 3 things. Right? Number 1, which actually makes a lot of sense. It's not going to be easy for us to do, but makes a lot of sense. The Chinese government identified locations in China where it's not possible to live out of poverty, right? So actually, because some locations are very remote, some locations they don't have good soil, some locations they don't have good water, they don't have enough water, then it's not possible to sustain a good economic growth there, and not possible for people to live out of subsistence, meaning that you have to move, right? So the Chinese government actually in the last 20 years have been identifying those places and move people out, right? And say, and educating the population. They don't do it forcibly. They educate the population. Hey, if you stay where you are, we cannot help you, right? And actually in Indonesia, some of our people live in very remote areas where it's not only too hard, but also too expensive to build schools, too hard to build infrastructure, right? So I think we need to look at, the Chinese example, right?
That's right.
And then secondly, they redefine what is poverty, right? So in the past, poverty used to be defined by specific metrics, like do you have certain income, is your house built of rumahnya lantainya tanah, or is it brick, or do you have TV, or do you have air conditioning at home? Then you are not poor. So in China now, you actually have to declare yourself if you want to be poor, right? So because
nobody wants to declare
no,
themselves.
but the thing is here, when you declare, you get government help.
Right?
Okay.
Funding, right?
Yeah. So you can only get government help if you declare yourself poor.
That's right.
And the thing is, the Chinese example showed us, it's very clear here that poverty can be relative. You can be poor maybe 3 months out of 12, or 4 months out of 12, right? Or sometimes when your
Just like
family got into an accident.
pandemic.
Right? Yeah, or
Could be
a pandemic,
like,
and then you became poor, right? So
Yes.
poverty can be relative, and sometimes people need help, and it will take some time for the statistics to catch up, right? So they actually redefine, and I think that is really a good idea that we should look into it, right?
Yeah.
Indonesia, we say we are a gotong royong society. We want to live, we want to support each other, and there they actually built the ecosystem in order for us to support each other who are in need. Yeah.
That's right, helping each other out. Now, we wish that we have more time with you, Mas Yuza, but we are now constrained with time. One more, just very short question from me. What does the AI said about the future of Indonesia?
Yeah, so 2 things. They said the future of Indonesia is very bright.
Okay,
We can be an advanced country, like Indonesia maju is possible, but there's a lot of prerequisites, right? First, we need to take care of the health of our people. We need to make sure there's no stunted children in Indonesia, right? And then secondly, we need to make sure that we provide high quality education for everybody, not only for the children of the rich, but for everybody, right? So if we can do that, then we have a bright future. But if we don't, then we will stay as a middle income country, and we will stay fragile, meaning that there will be a lot of discontent, and because of the wealth gap will keep on the same or will increase.
Health and education
Health
equality.
and education.
There you go. 100 ide untuk Presiden dan DPR baru dari Dirgayuza, from Dirgayuza Setiawan. This actually, you can read it also for free.
Yeah.
You said it's on your Instagram, so do check that out. This is definitely a staple book that not only the candidates needs to have in their hands during the campaign period or during their later on administrative, but us as the Indonesian citizens also to read.
We
more
can
on
also
this.
contribute.
Definitely.
Yes.
With ideas. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih.
Fiza.
Thank you
It's
for
such a
having
great
me.
pleasure.
Thanks for having
for
me.
coming.
And all right, guys, we're taking another short break right now. In the meantime, don't forget to follow our social medias. We're on Instagram, X, and also YouTube at See Today News. We'll be back with many more updates.